Good afternoon, Hinsters. I hope you are keeping safe and well. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, welcome too. And I am recording, of course, again from the Caribbean. I often go to the Caribbean when I'm doing my laundry. And I don't want you to see my laundry in the video. So I hope you enjoy the waves and the beautiful blue skies and the palm tree, of course, the tree, yes, being an archetype of Virgo. And this is going to be then our next episode of the Hawaii Hermes series, where we track Hermes or Mercury and all of its transits through the signs. So please do, if you are interested, please do check out the previous episodes I did for this series. So you can see Hermes or Mercury's previous sort of forays through the signs, especially Mercury's transit through Leo. And that was the last one that I did. So do check that one out, because that is the sign that Mercury is just about to step out of on this day, August 11th. So the actual date of the Mercury in Virgo transit is August 12th, and it's going to last until August 31st, 2021. Now, by the way, if you are new to my channel, if you like what I do, if this video resonates for you, then please do subscribe to my channel. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, which I'm very excited about. So please do, if you want to help me and support me in that way. And you can also give this video a thumbs up. Again, if you like it sincerely, if it resonates, blah, blah, blah. And please comment as well, if you can, and tell me where you have Virgo in your birth chart. I'd love to know. I have a lot of Virgo in my own birth chart, so I'd love to connect with you. I do try to respond to all the comments sincerely when I have the time. So let's talk about your own Virgo placements and your sort of astrological story and experience. So what I want to do now is share my screen. Just give me a moment, please. Oops, maybe not this one. This one, yes. Okay, hopefully this works and you can all see. But yes, this is Mercury in Virgo. Let me know, by the way, Hinsters, if you like this new kind of style that I'm going to take with the presentation and the kind of screen sharing. Let us know what you think in the comments. I might continue this way, but yes, again, August 12th to 31st, 2021 is the actual transit dates. So first of all, very, very briefly, again, you can watch my Hawaii Hermes episodes to get a better idea, a more in-depth, rich knowledge and experience of Mercury and its transits through the previous signs for more detail. But very, very briefly today and here, what is Mercury? So I've listed some of the archetypes here on the screen. Mercury is the messenger. It is the trickster. It is the teleporter, and it is also the adapter. And so these types of thing are going to, of course, always be significant when you are experiencing Mercury transit. And by messenger, I mean in all the senses. So the mundane senses, yes, text messaging, chatting, emails, but also in the sort of more metaphorical or metaphysical sort of ways. Mercury definitely communicates messages from the divine, from your spirit guides, from your ancestors, from God, the gods, whatever, through synchronicities, especially through the mundane means of the world, such as through, yes, words, through numbers, through a certain street sign that you see. It's kind of like when you're like in a cafe or a restaurant and you're having a particular thought, and as you're having that thought or you're having that question, you hear just the right song lyric in the background, or you overhear just the right snippet of a conversation, which is the answer to that question you had. And so these types of synchronicity are the divine ways in which Mercury sort of messages to us. And of course, one of the most famous things in astrology is the Mercury retrograde. And there's a way in which the Mercury retrograde as well offers us up sort of divine lessons. You know, Mercury retrograde is very infamous for tripping us up in many different ways, whether that's through transport or technology, machines, and frustrating us perhaps, as a way to make us think about, you know, is this the end of the world really? You know, if I can't get on this bus that I usually get on, is it the end of the world, or is it not the end of the world? You know, that kind of thing. Mercury retrograde presents these things to help us see that there's more to life than, you know, our routines. There's more to life than the machines or the devices or the routes that we typically rely on. And it can present this kind of shaking up of those things, and also to help us be more creative and more spontaneous and innovative as well. That's also very mercurial. And so we get those types of divine message as well from Mercury. And yes, that leads then onto the next sort of idea about Mercury, is that Mercury is the trickster. And I think we're going to experience more of this, or some of this, if we are ignoring the Mercury in Virgo sort of themes that are going to be activated. And I'm going to get onto Virgo in a minute. But yes, Mercury is the trickster. You know, it is associated with other archetypes like foxes, coyotes, cats even at times. And we are finishing up a Mercury in Leo transit. So that's something to think about, cats and those archetypes. And also Mercury is the teleporter. Yes, so I'm thinking of teleporters like Nightcrawler in the X-Men series, and these sorts of archetype which literally travel through different dimensions or spaces or times, and they are bringing something back, or they are bringing something forward. And so there can be this sort of different way in which Mercury allows us to get the message. But also to travel through into different dimensions and break our conceit as well, our conceitedness. That's something that Mercury does as well, because Mercury is about this sort of double-sidedness. It is, in my opinion, it is the planet that is the most the light and the shade. Even though all the planets have that, Mercury is the most light and shade, and the most actively fleeting between the two type of planet. So I think it's the least likely candidate to be put in the good planets category, but also to be put in the bad planets category. I think it can be exceptional for us, and it can also be really awful for us quite easily and quite frequently when it comes to Mercury, because it's a trickster. It wants to play up, but a lot of the time as well, it wants to adapt. You know, it wants to adapt to, in a birth chart, for example, in the planet that it is conjuncting. So it actually takes on, it is said in traditional astrology, it takes on the qualities of the planet it's closest to, much more readily, let's say, than some other planets or archetypes may do. And so there is this fluidity, of course, with Mercury. There is this slippery nature to Mercury as well, sneaky nature to Mercury as well, surreptitious nature. All these kind of words often crop up when we think of Mercury. And again, it's about adaptation and thinking outside of the box a lot of the time, and also seeing other people's boxes, you know, and trying to relate in some way, understand. And especially as Mercury gets into Virgo, there's going to be a lot more of this, like trying to deconstruct as a way to understand, especially to deconstruct internally and introspectively. This type of thing is definitely going to be on the increase. But yes, what is Virgo then? And let me just move this a second. Yes, what is Virgo? So you can look at this illustration here, this art that we have first of all, and you can get a good, I think, visual of the archetype of Virgo. You know, some of the most common kind of tropes when it comes to Virgo is that it's, you know, the hermit, or it's a very hermetic type of sign. The tortoise or the turtle is another one. And also the spiritual accountant is another one. Now, of course, this is not a video specifically on Virgos. So again, I'm not going into so much depth today. You can check out my other videos recently that I did, Mars in Virgo and Venus in Virgo, for a little bit more. And of course, we will have a new moon in Virgo eventually. So check those videos out if you wish. But here I just picked the ones that I find most kind of relevant now. So the hermit, you know, the turtle, the tortoise, the sort of spiritual accountant, especially if you're a Virgo rising, you are very much a spiritual accountant type of spirit person. And I say this because Virgo is like very close to the judge sort of archetype, but a judge in the way of measuring things very actively, very flexibly, in that mercurial way again, very curiously as well. And so there can be a lot of the criticism that comes through. There can be a lot of the deconstruction and a lot of anxiety as well, which comes along with Virgo energy. But Virgo is on the Virgo Pisces axis, and you can see, like in this art here, Virgo sees everything. I'm going to say that again. Virgo sees everything, or maybe 99.999% of things. But because it's one of the inward signs, and also it's on the Virgo Pisces axis, the Virgo rising especially might not really say all of these things, because they very quickly realize when these things are put out or expressed, there can be a lot of backlash. You know, the magic of Virgo is very much suppressed a lot of the time. I talked about how Virgo is the tree as well earlier on one of my earlier videos on the channel, and there's something similar going on here, where there's this sense of being overlooked, especially when the Virgo is considered to be overacting or acting out. And so there are these kind of feelings that Virgo is like the silent, quiet observer and absorber, mercurial, right? Absorbing, adapting to all of the information, sort of swimming around it. And also, Virgo is kind of like the counter, counting everything, collecting everything. I often describe Virgo as having like a filing cabinet mentally on everyone or everything, and it's constantly putting data into that filing cabinet to be kept safely and silently again somewhere, ready to be drawn out or revisited if need be. You know, if you dare to argue with a Virgo rising, they might suddenly pull out this filing cabinet, you know, and start to very easily and very quickly recall everything that you said, like receipts, you know, start to come out very easily with the Virgo rising, or people who have a lot of Virgo in the chart. This can really happen, but it might take them a while to get to that point, because there's a lot with Virgo of that sort of demure energy, which is very deceiving, but demureness, like how Pisces can often be described as gullible or passive, you know, these kind of sort of deceptive misunderstandings that we have of the two signs. For Virgo, it's like there's this demure kind of wallflower. Virgo sextiles Cancer and Scorpio, so there's always this kind of silencing that gets put on Virgo energy, and that therefore gets very misunderstood. But yeah, when we dare to challenge the Virgo or push the Virgo, they can, especially if the individual has Mercury in Virgo in the first house or the third house, something like that, there can be this explosion of everything that that Virgo is thinking or wants to say. And it can be quite like shocking. And I'm going to get onto that very soon. But yeah, Hermes or Mercury in Virgo then is, of course, like in any sign, really going to display something dualistic, a dualistic nature, and that adaptability. Again, so watch out for that as well, and how we can be adapting in more critical ways or more introspectively critical ways or in more sifting judgmental organizational ways. Well, all of this stuff can really come through now, or counting or accounting, much more readily. I want to move on then to this idea of exaltation, because if you didn't know, Mercury is said to be exalted in the sign of Virgo. So we're about to experience a planet in its exaltation. And the exaltation is like, it's like when a planet or archetype is kind of in the best sign it could be. It's kind of in the best place it could be. It's more than the domicile, which is, Mercury and Gemini. It's also interesting, Mercury and Virgo. Mercury is both in its domicile and exaltation, again, which is very interesting. Different to all the other planets, but that's something really interesting about Mercury. Again, something more rebellious or flitting from one side to the other. Is it good? Is it bad? Mercurial in Old English had that kind of like more negative connotation, actually. He's mercurial, he's a liar, or he's slippery, he's a trickster, that kind of thing. So there's that flipping in and out or side to side that can be had always. And so yes, Mercury has both its exaltation and domicile in Virgo. And the exaltation, as some of you might know, Dolo de Pilatman here on YouTube, and he has in his older work on the signs described the exaltation as the planet being at Disneyland. So if you imagine you're a kid at Disneyland, like it's like all your dreams come true. You have like everything you want, everything you could desire, and it feels so magical, and it just feels so amazing, and you have like all the power in the world at your hands, type of thing. Basically, the planet is like on overdrive, and the planet speaks extremely loudly in the chart when it's exalted in some sense, or it engages extremely intensely with the themes of the house that it's in, if it's in an exalted sign. And also, I remember talking about this with someone in terms of Mercury being exalted, and that the exaltation isn't always like roses and rainbows. The exaltation can, because we always have our free will, right? The exaltation, just like we can make a fallen planet or a retrograde planet with something really good and really transformative, we can also make the exalted planet something really awful and evil. And I remember discussing this with someone, and how if you have, for example, Mercury in Virgo natally, you could have all of that extremely amplified mercurial calculative energy, but you could choose to use it to rob a bank, basically. So you could be this amazing plotter of crimes, right? Because you have all of that favorable energy that is both hyper communicative and hyper analytical, but also in that very inward, quote unquote, feminine Virgoan sort of side of Mercury, which gets much less noticed than Gemini, which is the outward or quote unquote masculine side of Mercury, which very much more quickly and easily gets maligned by people. Gemini gets tarred in so many different ways and so quickly. And Virgo energy is a bit more like in the shadows or in the background, the wallflower type of stuff coming through, the quiet type. And they often say it's the quiet ones you should watch out for, for the good, bad, or ugly, right? So that's a little bit on exaltation. Now let's hop on over to the transits. So hopefully you can see now the screen here where we have the 12th of August, which is the date that Mercury basically gets to 0 degrees of Virgo. You can see here. This is Mercury right here on my screen, and that's Virgo. And then we have Mars here also in Virgo, and Venus also in Virgo. So yes, Mercury enters this exalted sign, but it's still under the beams of the sun. You can see it's within it's within range still of the sun. However, even though usually when a planet's under the beams of the sun or really close to the sun, and the sun would have more influence, you can see here the sun is in Leo. When the planet under the sun is exalted, it actually gets protection. So what I'm learning on my own traditional astrology course is that traditional astrologers believed that this kind of golden chariot was formed and the planet would sit in this chariot, which would protect them actually from that combustion or from the dominance of the sun. And so Mercury is about to get much more independent and exalted. So even though it's close to the sun, there's this moving away and being more powerful than the sun in some ways for some of us. And so get ready then for more mercurial. And even as I was starting to film this video or plan for this video, I could hear all the beep, 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 beep kind of sounds of people, the delivery people, when they deliver parcels and letters. I could hear all of that all of a sudden, like coming from all different directions. It just sounded suddenly, and I could hear the trains of the nearby train station going by constantly. And it just kind of reminded me of mercurial sort of energy. And I really feel like this is Mercury about to hop into Virgo, and Mercury announcing itself. I'm here and I'm exalted. Listen to me and my themes and my archetypes, such as delivery people, couriers, short journeys, travel, all these things starting to bubble up much more sentiently. Yeah, much more heard or felt. But yes, we have then Mercury riding this sort of golden chariot away from the sun. And also we have Mars, as I said, and Venus in Mercury. Again, check out my videos if you want to know more about those two planets in Virgo, even Mars and Venus in Virgo. What we have here, because Mercury is entering Virgo, Mercury is going to also get more power over Mars and Venus. And so anything negative or less desirable that Mars, Venus had been doing or is doing for you right now could be much more easily sort of controlled or tempered by Mercury entering Virgo. And I feel like this is going to kind of neutralize especially some of the Venus and Virgo things that have been introduced for us. The self-criticism, the intrusive thoughts, the over kind of saturation of other people's advice and opinions. I think all of that will start to disappear a bit for us, some of us, and that we're going to get much more of an independent sort of stance on things, especially because we're still in Leo season as well. I think much more of the independence will come through for a lot of us. And also, we have Mercury opposing Jupiter in Aquarius, and Jupiter is currently retrograding in Aquarius at 28 degrees. And again, even though there's this oppositional energy between the two, I think Mercury is going to have a bit more of the upper hand here, being in its exaltation and in a sign where it has its domicile, whereas Jupiter has had to leave Pisces, right, and go into retrograde. And is retrograde as well. and there's this opposition. And so there could be, those continuing kind of battles about what is logical versus what is ideal or hoped for, Jupiterian stuff, what is kind of just being, when you just rely on something or depend on your luck. I think more of that will start to weaken and dissipate, and we'll be forced, willingly or otherwise, we'll be made to think much more logically and introspectively and cleverly about how we're actually going to put our hands to things and do things, because that's also what Mercury is. It's about the hands, the fingers, and actually doing things with the hands. And this could even be in a financial or business sense, because Mercury is also about those things, the mercantile. And so it could be about finding out how to actually make more money for some of you, or to make money rather than like just hoping that money will come along, right? You can get much more mastermind-like with this transit, instead of just waiting for something to fall from the sky type of thing, or relying on past sort of luck, or even relying on current blessings. Mercury will present this agitation, I think, or even this excitement. There could be lots of ideas, for example, or a very, very complex and particular idea that comes to the surface that helps you start to make more money, or make the money that you want to, or to save money, or whatever it is, or to engage in some sort of deal or business as well, mercantile stuff. And you can become very astute about it. That's another kind of Mercury and Virgo sort of word, astute, and able to deduct so much from saying so little. That's very Mercury and Virgo, deduct so much from saying so little without the need to say even anything sometimes. So there's going to be a lot more of that coming through for us. And finally, also in terms of the transits, Mercury, or the ones that I wanted to mention, Mercury is, yes, in Virgo, squaring Lilith in Gemini. Now you can't see Lilith here on the screen, but Lilith is in Gemini. And this is really, really interesting, I think. And it's something that got me thinking, actually. If I go back to this slideshow for you. Oops. What's going on? Okay, what's going on here? Sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening. Mercurial stuff. Okay, here we go. We're back in the room. So here you can see, it kind of got me thinking in recent days, watching Pan's Labyrinth. This, if you haven't seen it, this 2006 film directed by Guillermo del Toro. Sorry about my pronunciation. And I was thinking about Virgo and the upcoming Mercury in Virgo transit. And this actress, Maribel Verdú, who plays the character Mercedes. And it got me thinking about how Virgo very often, as I mentioned earlier, gets these like labels of demure or polite or innocent, butter wouldn't melt, sort of Sandra Dee from Greece, sort of labels. And then what happens with Virgo is that sometimes all of a sudden we get the demure deviating, or the demure rebelling in some sense. And I really think that that's what's going to become a theme for a lot of us with this Mercury squaring Lilith in Gemini. I think a lot more of the outward energy of Mercury is actually going to come through, especially because with Lilith, but also even more with the North Node in Gemini for so long this year. I really feel that any kind of Virgo Gemini interaction is going to really bring this side out of Virgo, this outward mercurial side, this trickster mercurial side, which is much more hands-on, hands-out, punchy kind of thing. Now, of course, we are in the ox year, so it always has to be, I feel, part of the bigger picture, part of the lane you want to go down, and nothing too out of the box, nothing too bizarre, because then we can fall into kind of the wrong lane or fix on the wrong thing for quite a long time. And so there has to be some, I wrote it down here, there has to be something that we discerned already, or we are discerning. That's what Virgo does. And therefore, having discerned, dedicate to. There has to be that thing already happening. I don't think we should dedicate to something more whimsical, unless, the whimsical is part of your bigger picture, your right way, that kind of thing. but yeah, this character Mercedes, she's like a servant type. She kind of overlooks the cooks that are all serving this captain and this military force. Very real, very like warlike, set alongside, of course, the whole Pan's Labyrinth fantastical part of the story, which has a child as its protagonist, and it has fantastical creatures, has fairies, it has the labyrinth, it has, magical tests and all the rest of it. So you get the very, very real Virgo alongside very closely the very, very quote unquote unreal Piscean energy. That axis really comes through strong in this film. But also, so does the archetype of the servant or the demure through basically all of the women in this film, I felt. And then we get the demure kind of deviating, and Mercedes turning against the captain and revealing herself towards the end of the film. Sorry to spoil if you haven't seen it, but revealing herself towards the end of the film as a kind of double agent type, as a sleeper cell type who was actually working with, and indeed in love with someone from the enemy, the forces that the captain was fighting. And there can be that surprise that Virgo presents to us, especially when Mercury enters Virgo, the surprise of what or who we thought was demure or serving only or servile even. And Mercury is like, nope, you kidded yourself, or you were too proud. Especially one thing we always get when we move from Leo into Virgo is lessons about pride. For the good, bad, or ugly, we get lessons about pride. Sometimes we need to learn to be more proud. Sometimes we need to learn to be less proud, right? And so we always get these kind of theme. And I think Mercury comes into Virgo sometimes for some of us now to test us or to show us that which, or people who we thought were just beneath us or serving us, can actually have this deviation now, can actually revolt, rebel, leave, especially with Mercury squaring Lilith. So if there's been any kind of oppression or suppression, you can check out my video on Lilith, by the way. I have a video which I made a year or two ago. Check that out for more. But Lilith and Virgo actually share some similarities, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I think also what this might present for us is, like Mercedes in the film Pan's Labyrinth, and how she kind of shocks the captain when she turns around and she starts stabbing him, and she like cuts his mouth open and does all these really, really suddenly violent things against a very violent oppressor. We have this idea of a refusal to not serve your cause. So you're refusing now this year at this point to not serve your cause. You're refusing to abandon your cause. So I think this kind of thing can be really good for those people who have been wavering recently. There's a kind of, there could be something introduced where you are forced to get back on track, or you pull yourself together in some sense and get back on track. Because later we have Libra season, which is the cardinal season, aka the judgment season. And I'm not joking, but this is one of the seasons where we do get those huge slaps from the universe if we've still been, as people from my hometown would say, fannying around, if we've still been fannying around and not listening to the things that we have to have already accounted for, listening to the things that we have to have already organized. If we've still been ignoring or playing stupid, Virgo Pisces axis, playing stupid, especially in the ox year, we can do that. Libra will come in and really be the sword that comes down. The universe, your ancestors, your guides will really come through with quite a harsh or hitting sort of lesson. And that's just because it's a cardinal season. And so it really is a good time for us to think about it, what we have been discerning, what we still have to, discern, and to dedicate to the right thing and to keep on that thing. Also, it got me thinking about Deliveroo drivers and kind of like the persistent courier, like knocking on your door, like for a long time, multiple times for you to get something, to receive something. There can be that resistance from the servant, or what you view as the servant, or who you view as needing to serve you. You know, there can be that resistance, even trickery. Look at this art here. This pizza boy art. There can be this trickery, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, yes, I'm serving you, but also there's something you have no idea about, or there's also this power I have over you now, in some sense, in some way. There can be that as well. You know, it's like getting annoyed at your delivery driver because they don't want to get out of their car, or because they don't want to come up all these stairs to give you the food. You in this season might have to go down the stairs, you know, you might have to go up to the car. And very much, I think this is going to be where we have to meet people halfway in some sense in Virgo season. We have to respect and appreciate those people, that which serves us. We can't just, in this Piscean way, just be like going with the flow and like being really passive and susceptible and be like, oh yeah, nothing's happening, or I don't have to do anything much, just blah blah blah. No, sometimes we actually have to apply and bow and pay homage to that which gives us the things that we want, and not only pay attention to the fact that we get what we want, if that makes sense. You know, so we could have these moments of like tantrum, even where Mercury comes through and a servant or serving kind of entity power doesn't give us what we want, and we're having to think about that or work with that and go inside, even with Mercury in Virgo, you know, and thinking about how we can help the helper, how we can serve the server. And again, that can be in very literal senses, like the delivery driver, postman, postwoman, you know, or the courier banging on your door, waking you up. You know, they're not just going to leave a note, they're going to bang until you wake up and listen to them and see them and meet them. So you could get these people, these things coming through right now where people force you to meet them and see them. And you're forced to pay attention to something. And, you know, I think there's going to be this question then of, are we going to sulk about that? Because Virgo energy can bring this kind of sulking, just like Piscean energy can bring. This axis can bring us sulking because we don't get what we want, or sulking because I've been perfect, I've been so demure, why can't I get what I want, kind of thing. Or will we just serve the person or the thing which serves us? Will we give back? Will we be fair as well? We're approaching the season of divine fairness, Libra season. Are we getting closer to that with Mercury zipping through Virgo towards Libra? So yeah, I think also finally then, with Mercury coming off the back of this new moon in Leo, which we just had, which I made a video on, by the way, I think there's also this sense of what will we give blood to, you know, because again, to go back to the Pisces Virgo axis, if Pisces is about the vision and the ideal, the dream, Virgo is very much about what are we going to put into it? What are we going to apply to it? You know, it's like, I'll always remember the Divine Venus here on YouTube. And many years ago, one of her videos on the midheaven, I think it was the Pisces midheaven, that midheaven in Pisces and the IC in Virgo, that axis. And she mentioned the film Matilda as an example of this axis. And I thought that was a really good illustration of Virgo and Pisces, because there's all of the magic and the ideal and the desire for escape and all the rest of it. But there's also the very real having to contend with very real routine things like school, like family, like the home. You know, Virgo does, of course, sextile Cancer. So the home, the house is still very much immediate to the dream, intimately intertwined with the dream. Just like we had in the film Pan's Labyrinth, you know. It's still very close to home, very literally. And also films like Matilda, they illustrate the memorizing of spells, rituals, or the learning of how to actually use and apply magic power. That's the Virgo side of the axis, the actual thinking about how, Mercury thinking about how, processing also all the ingredients to actually get it done, get the spell out there, and not to just see it or just feel it, because sometimes just seeing or feeling it doesn't get us out of the problem or away from the situation that we don't want to be in. And so, yeah, I think we'll be asked, what are we going to give blood to? What are we going to put skin into? What are we going to put elbow grease toward? That's what Mercury and Virgo will be asking us and getting us to more intensely think about. Yeah, so that's kind of all I have for you, for us. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed, and I will be back with another video very soon. I think the next one's going to be on the full moon, but who knows? Let me know in the comments what you thought of this and what you are going through in terms of Virgo and where you have Virgo again in your chart. I love you very much, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.